Hello and welcome to Tank and AFE News. My name's Tom and today we are reviewing a book. We have US Airborne Tanks, 1939 to 1945 by Charles C. Roberts, Jr. As you can see, this is a hardcover book, pretty much sort of standard size. Price is $32.95 in the US, although I've noticed on some of the online sellers it's going for quite a bit less, so saw it listed for just a little above $20 or $19.99 in the UK. Page count is 140 about, which considering the topic is pretty impressive actually, because of course US airborne tanks did not see much combat during World War II. First impressions is that it is certainly a nice looking book. You know, the paper quality is fine, the binding seems fine, all that sort of stuff that you'd expect from a quality publisher. And this one's pen and sword, so their stuff's usually pretty nice from the material standpoint. As far as the book itself, as you can see, you got 4 chapters plus an appendices. Chapter 1, so we'll just sort of start going through it. Acknowledgements and picture credits. Introduction. So the first chapter is the airborne tank concept. So this one actually sort of gives an overview of airborne tank development around the world leading up to World War II, which is nice. It gives you some context, and you know, there's not a lot of books that have been written on the topic in great detail. This book is, I would say, more images almost than text. There's a fair bit of text in here, but there are a lot of images, which is nice because a lot of times an image can convey information a lot better than written descriptions can. So here we see it starting with Christie, of course, explaining his suspension system. There we get Christie's airborne tank idea, which you know, seems rather silly in retrospect, but in that period where there was so much innovation going on in technology, you know, it was sort of worth pursuing all these different crazy ideas, even if, you know, some of the things that we think of as normal now, you know, 100 years ago, you would have told somebody about them and they'd be like, that sounds insane. So here we have the Soviets dropping an amphibious tank onto the water from a plane. I'm suspecting that that works once. Here we also see during the war sort of a martyr being offloaded from one of the large German transport planes. So it talks about, obviously it has to talk about gliders and transport planes, because you can't talk about airborne forces without talking about the flying devices that have to carry them. So there's a Japanese glider, and the British, and then it gets specifically into the US airborne tank. A little background just on other sort of light tanks. You know, this was the one vehicle that Marmon Harrington made that was not completely terrible, because all of Marmon Harrington's pre-war and early war tank designs were just horrendous. I mean, aside from just being very small and unimpressive on sort of as far as their combat attributes, they were incredibly, they just had really bad quality and reliability issues. So really this book's primarily about the M22 Locust, since that's really the only US airborne tank. So on that topic, if you are looking for something about the Locust, this is going to be your source to go to. There's a lot of details. So I mean, you can see here pictures of track and suspension units, you know, illustrations that are from the manuals and government resources, as well as obviously he's gone out and gotten pictures of Locusts as they still exist. So I suspect this is going to become the definitive work for anyone looking for information on the M22. And it is an interesting little vehicle, even if it's partly because of how small and quirky it is. I mean, obviously not an impressive vehicle. So anyway, so we'll leaf through this. I think you get the idea on the technical stuff. If you're looking for technical descriptions, there's a lot of stuff in here. Then it gets into Chapter 3, the 151st Airborne Tank Company and the 28th Airborne Tank Battalion in the Second World War. So it's talking about the units themselves that operated these vehicles, or at least that trained with them. Some of them ended up switching, being converted into other types of units. But here's pictures. So again, quite a few pictures here of the units in training. Go forward here a bit. And then oddly enough, the Locust didn't really see use with the United States, but it did see some use with the British. So here this chapter, US Airborne Tank usage in the Second World War. So the very limited interactions that it was used are detailed in here. So it's sort of nice that a book this size, you can actually give details of all the actions the vehicle was in, because it was used so little. And then it finishes out here with some of these tanks post-war. So here's an Egyptian one knocked out in the 48 Arab-Israeli War. Here's one's in the United States waiting to be scrapped. Some were sold to farmers for agricultural use, which, considering how light it was, using it as a tractor is really not as unrealistic as some of the larger tanks. And then here we have the daily log from the 151st Airborne Tank Company. Oops. So that's the main appendix. And then recommended reading, which is pretty much what you'd expect. You got Stephen Zaloga, Honeycutt, Robert Ikes. So this guy's gone to the right sources for information. So that is, in a nutshell, US Airborne Tanks, 1939 to 45. This one I give a thumbs up. Number one, because it's just a well-done book. And like I said, online it's going for just about 20 bucks, which, you know, considering that a lot of those softcover Osprey type books go for almost that much, this is a pretty good bargain for, you know, a book of this quality. And also, like I said, it fits into, it's covering a niche topic, which for someone like me, I've got enough books on the well-known vehicles. The stuff I get excited about nowadays are books like this that are covering the more obscure stuff that hasn't been covered by other people. So, yeah, this one's definitely worth picking up if you want to really, you know, round out your collection of books on U.S. armor from World War II, because, like I said, this is a niche that has not been covered very often. I think there's been like maybe an Osprey soft cover on it, and it, you know, it gets a little bit of mention in the Honeycutt books, but not a lot else. I'm sure there's other books that I'm forgetting. Anyhow, go out, buy this one. I like it. Thank you to Casemate for sending me this review copy, and we'll catch you on the next one.